this working? Now, can you hear me?
Is the bar open? Will the bar be open?
Will the bar be open?
No, the bar will be closed, along with the dining room.
You're going to get another question. Is it a charged meal?
That is a good question, and I don't know the answer to that. You'll have to ask Kevin or Nancy tomorrow. I don't know. Yeah, I know. I will try to ask them in the dining room tonight. And hopefully they'll have the answer to that. Well, I don't know if Will knows, but we'll find out. Just make yeah, I don't know if I can make that decision.
You join?
Yes.
Could you show me the house? Doesn't seem to be changing the town, but does it have a point somewhere? And how could it change it on? Why do we all have?
I don't know. It's when we're all ready to go.
Go back. One more. Okay.
All right. So that down.
Yep.
The next, the one you
Well, thanks for coming.
Oh, wait, he's
Yeah.
going to introduce you first.
A self-introduction. Are you ready?
Yep.
Okay, good afternoon, everybody. And welcome to our monthly TidePointe speaker series. Today we have the pleasure to hear our friend and neighbor, John Rumsey. John has a fascinating story of his many years of sailing with some of the top boat owners in the world. Some personal background covering John. John was born and raised in San Francisco, California. His father was an engineer and helped build the San Francisco Bay Bridge, which opened in 1936. During World War II, the family moved to Belvedere Island. At that time, his dad joined the San Francisco Yacht Club, where during John's childhood, he became proficient in sailing. In 1961, John moved to San Diego to join a friend who started a sail-making business. He was with the company North Sails through the 60s and 70s, learning the sail business and traveling throughout Mexico, the United States, the Pacific, and Europe. John sailed with customers such as Ted Turner. In 1977, a friend called and asked if he would like to join him in the purchase of Palmetto Bay Marina here on Hilton Head Island, which he did, and then became a resident of Hilton Head Island. Now for the rest of the story, please join me in welcoming John Rumsey.
Actually, he told you all about the first part. One of the beauties of the sailing, get to sail around the world and places like that. This is a sunrise over the Gulf Stream a few years ago when I was delivering boats up to Hilton Head from Florida. And the Gulf Stream is a river of water that runs from Florida up along the East Coast and keeps the water temperature fairly warm in England and Spain and and Portugal along the ocean there. And there's a similar current in Japan called the Japan current. It does the same thing. It goes north. These currents run about 3 or 4 knots. And so if you're sailing with them, you get a big boost out of them. And they, anyway, they make it fun going with them, but if you have to go against them, and if the wind is blowing, it could be sort of stormy and choppy. Did you ever wonder, perhaps, what would have happened if there was no wind like this? This is like this is in the ocean. The sailing ships couldn't sail to find the new continents and all that stuff, so they, but I often think about that, what the Western Hemisphere might be like without all those Europeans coming over here. Anyway, my dad, John Rumsey, he graduated from Case Institute in the 20s, and in the 30s, they were going to, excuse me, because of the Depression, the government and people wanted to build the dams, like the Grand Coulee Dam and the Boulder Dam, and so the engineers and the builders all came forward, and they had these big projects, like the San Francisco Bay Bridge. This is half of it. The other half goes from Yorba Buena Island over to Oakland. And my dad was the engineer on the first tower. He told me I was not quite born yet when this was over. So my dad and then many other builders and engineers moved to San Francisco to build these bridges. And this is the Golden Gate Bridge under construction. I have over here a piece of the Golden Gate Bridge, which would be those actual cables that are, you see stringing there. When the Golden Gate Bridge was 50 years old, they replaced the suspender cables that held the roadway up, and they cut the cables up and gold plated them and sold them as mementos. I found that piece of the Golden Gate Bridge in Switzerland at a antique store. Anyway, the Golden Gate Bridge was financed by the federal government and had been talked about for many years. And the Golden Gate Bridge was financed by the new Bank of America, and private investors bought bonds to support it. It cost $37 million, and it opened in 1937, a year after the Bay Bridge. Of course, $37 million now buy a nice house in Marin County or Beverly Hills. So the inflation is moving along nicely. These bridges were built with new systems and ideas that were so much bigger than, particularly the Golden Gate Bridge. It was a mile all the way across the span. And they had to invent systems that went along and did it, but they had to do all their calculations with slide rules. The Bay Bridge was finished in 1936, and the people were able to move to the East Bay, and then the Golden Gate Bridge in 1937 allowed people to move north to Marin County and further north. In Santa Fe, which is the county seat, my wife Sheila grew up, and her family owned the Lucas Valley Dairy, which was milk products and an ice company. And we had ice delivered to our house. Everybody had ice boxes, and the iceman, I can even remember his name. His name was Lou Berg. That was 70 years ago. He was a nice guy, and I was a kid. And dishwashers and TVs and refrigerators didn't come along until the end of the 40s in our area. So my dad and mother decided to move to the Tiburon Peninsula to Belvedere Island with my sister Perry and myself. Tiburon actually was a railroad town, which is now, of course, a very expensive residential district, and the San Francisco Yacht Club is in the Belvedere Cove, which is in the summer is a very neat place. In the summer, fogs come in through the Golden Gate, and but Belvedere Cove is still a very warm place, so it was a good place to keep your boat. There were two residential areas. There was Corinthian Island and Belvedere Island, which formed the cove where the yacht club was. I forgot to change the page.
That's what I was going to tell you. Don't forget your pictures.
These are some of the cables that they built, and they were making this stuff as they went along. It was really a neat deal. These are the large suspender cables that were anchored at either end, of course. And that's the Golden Gate Bridge on the southern side. That's where it's called Fort Point. And they continually paint it. The red lead paint.
My red.
That was my house, my dad's house, our family house. And there, over here, there's a lane that came down through here, and I could walk down the yacht club. This picture was taken about 5 years ago, but this part of the yacht club was the old yacht club. My mother won a boat called an El Toro, a little dinghy in the yacht club raffle, and that was my first boat. And of course, joining and moving to Belvedere, socially there were two things you could do after. There were a number of churches, of course, but socially they had the volunteer fire department, or you could, which is quite a social operation, and they didn't have many fires to put out. But and the other thing was the San Francisco Yacht Club. Unfortunately, my mother told the San Francisco Yacht Club. And this was my second boat. My dad bought this boat. That boat was 30 feet long, you wouldn't see it, but this was a very strong boat, and that's just a nice stay on the San Francisco Bay. That boat was built in 1920, and they are still sailing today.
What kind?
Designed by a Eastern designer. In 1957, I had been sailing there were starboats, and this was a boat that I built in my garage with Jake Wasser, who was a very good sailor. He'd built boats before, and he and I built the starboat, one for each of us. And my starboat cost me about $1,900 for the boat materials, a 900-pound iron keel, and $450 for the mainsail, the sails at that time. If you wanted to go racing in a starboat today and you got the best one, you buy one from Germany or Italy for $120,000. Inflation, rolling along. There are a number of classes that sail in between 20 and 40 feet in San Francisco, and there are 9 yacht clubs around the area that have, in the summertime, they have a series of races at each one. And so you get to get around the bay, and you learn to deal with the very strong currents and the winds. The Star class was an Olympic boat. And this is one of the newer boats, and that's racing in, not in San Francisco, it was racing in Florida, I think. But anyway, that's one of the, that was a fiberglass boat. So anyway, between 57 and 60, there were lots of starboat racing on the West Coast, and the very best sailors were sailing stars there, and I sailed in Santa Barbara and LA and Newport Beach and San Diego, and meeting all the star sailors at these regattas. And Lowell North was one of those. He was an aircraft engineer in San Diego, and he decided to start his own sail loft. And so in 1960, he started a sail loft. He invited me to come to work for him. But I had a chance to race in the Tahiti racing. So I sent Lowell a card from Tahiti saying I would be back in the falls. So that's when I got to start my sailmaking business. And Lowell, since Lowell was an aircraft engineer, he had a book called in this industry, The Theory of Wing Sections. And we use that pretty well to help in designing sails. There are new materials, Dacron, nylon, Orlon, and things like that. And before that, the sails were made of cotton. And Egyptian cotton, for some reason, was the best. And that was at the lowest stretch. But cotton, when it gets wet, after you put a lot of load on it, it stretches, so it's very hard to keep the shape of the sail the fastest shape you can. And so in 1960, Lowell had been in business, 61, Lowell had been in business for a couple of years and had a fairly large following of customers in the smaller class of stars, snipes, which are two-person boat, and lightnings, which are classes that were all over the United States. And in the case of the starboat, they were sailing all over the world. When I start expanding into the large boat sail needs, started with a boat called Ticonderoga. Ticonderoga, coincidentally, was launched in 1936. And this was built by Herreshoff, which is a very famous yacht designer. And those are some of the sails I made for the boat. And that's in one of the races. There was a fellow, Bob Johnson, a lumberman from Portland, Oregon, who had cruising boats that he sailed in the Transpac race, which is the race from Los Angeles to Honolulu, 2,300 miles. And his cruising boat, he was always finishing next to last. So he decided he wanted to be first. So after seeing the Ticonderoga sailing in the 61 race, the boat did very well. It was first to finish. It was a boat for the East Coast mostly, and it belonged to a guy in Michigan. And he chartered it for the next race in 63. And we had a crew of, I was invited to be on the crew because I knew the fellows that were arranging the crew, and they knew me and I knew them, and so we put a very good crew together. And there's a book over here about the Ticonderoga which tells the story of the various regattas. So anyway, Bob got on the radio telephone halfway across to Hawaii, and he called the owner and bought the boat right there. So he owned the boat when we arrived in Honolulu. a boat like Ticonderoga takes, they're 73 feet long. That boat weighs about 110,000 pounds. And takes 5 long distance races. You take 11, 12, maybe 14 crew people. And Bob would be the navigator and the skipper. And we had a great fellow, Sandy McKenzie, who was the cook. And then we had 2 watch groups that traded off. So there are 6 people sailing the boat at all times. And that includes changing sails because the weather changes, making sure everything is sheeted properly and so on. So anyway, we got a good start. We led around Catalina Island. We were leading the fleet most of the way, actually all the way, but in those days we had radio. We had a radio connection with the Coast Guard. People would report in every day with their positions, which were sometimes a little sketchy because you didn't always get sun sights for your navigation and that sort of thing. Well, after we won the Transpac race, that's another shot of the boat reaching along. And that's Bob Johnson taking a sight. And that's the crew. That's Bob Johnson there. That's Bob Johnson's son there, and I think that's me there. All very good sailors, and we were really happy to win that race. And there's a book here on the table which is going to be in the library that tells a lot about the life of that boat. It was really a beautiful boat, still going today in charter cruising and that sort of thing. Well, after the race was over, Bob sent the boat to Newport Beach to a boat yard there, and called the designer, Francis Hershoff, who was one of the famous yacht designers at the time, and he came out to Newport Beach to the boat yard, and they went over the boat. The boat gained quite a bit of weight from cruising amenities like a bronze bathtub and things like that, and so we ended up taking about 11,000 pounds of weight out of the boat, and that Francis Hershoff said that was about the design waterline of that boat. Anyway, after the boat was repaired and we made some new sails for it, Bob was going to take it around to Florida for the SORC race, which was a big, in those days, a big 6-race regatta in Florida in February and March, and boats come from all over the country to sail in it. And the reason there's a lot of 73-foot boats is the Cruising Club of America had a rule limiting boats to that size, which had something to do with the Depression and finances. There was a lot of money floating around those days, and so that's why most of these boats were 73 feet. They were called maxi boats at the time. So Bob had a delivery crew, and he took, I was racing on another boat from Mazatlan, from Los Angeles to Mazatlan. That was in the fall of, I can't keep track of which year I want to. Anyway, so I raced down. It was a good fleet of boats, and the Ticonderoga was coming down, sort of staying on everybody's way. But Bob was very happy with the speed of the boat, and so in Mazatlan, Bob invited his wife and Sheila to come, not Sheila, to come and sail with us from Mazatlan to Puerto Vallarta, which is just a 2-day trip, and which we did. And so it was beautiful. Sea of Cortez, warm sailing. It was lovely. Sheila had the night watch, and she spotted a light flashing off in the distance. As she woke me up, and I was probably taking a little nap on another cushion or something like that. But anyway, she woke me up, and we headed over for the boat. And the rest of the crew came on deck as we came alongside the boat with a flashing light. And it was a power boat out of Mazatlan, a charter fishing boat. And it was, they had engine failure. And so we took there was a gentleman from Oklahoma and his wife, and a young fellow from California who chartered the boat to go fishing, and they did go fishing. They had a large shark laid across the swim platform on the back of the boat, which they're probably thinking about saving it to eat when they were drifting in the middle of the ocean somewhere. At that time, Sheila and I were Sheila and I have been doing long distance heading. I was in San Diego, she was in San Rafael, and so we dated periodically and that sort of thing, and we became good friends. And we had a lot of mutual friends from San Rafael. So we've anchored in Puerto Vallarta. There were no harbors in Puerto Vallarta in that time, 62, I guess it was. Anyway, so we anchored there, and the crew was happy, thought there was a great adventure to save these people. The gentleman and his wife and the guy from younger fellow, he thanked us and particularly Sheila for finding them out in the middle of the ocean. Johnson called the U.S. Coast Guard, gave our position to them, and the Coast Guard relayed to the Mexican Coast Guard, and we later heard that the fishing boat had safely returned to Mazatlan. And Sheila was a hero. She's always a hero. And Bob took the guests from Oklahoma and the young fellow. They found a bus back to Mazatlan because all their stuff was at Mazatlan, of course. Here's Sheila on the dock. Sheila also had family on the Lucas Valley Dairy, which I spoke about. They had the ice company, and the dairy in Marin County in those days were loaded with dairy farms, and Sheila's dad would contract for the milk, and that's where he got his product mostly. Well, now the Big Tie sailed in the 1964 Southern Ocean Racing Circuit, and all the improvements on it, we actually won all the races and set a speed record, sailing record from Miami to Nassau, and that was a windy day, and it was a very good trip. It's an overnight trip to Nassau. Then Bob went back west, and I wasn't along, but they sailed from Los Angeles to Tahiti, and they were first to finish and set a record in that race. So it had been set by a 90-foot boat some years ago. Then in the 65 SORC, we were first to finish, second in class behind Ted Turner's 12-meter American Eagle, and would have broken Ty's record to Nassau, Miami to Nassau, except for a cruise ship that came in just in front of us, and we had to slow down to keep from getting around him. Then the next race to Miami to Montego Bay, first to finish and set a new course record. Then we went to did the Bermuda race in 1966. And it's a short race with a lot of boats in it. The weather was kind of squirrely in the Gulf Stream. You have to get the right wind. We didn't do too well in that. But then we sailed from Bermuda to Copenhagen. And that was a long race. There had been a few of them during the years. And that was, the wind was strong at the beginning, first 4 days. We fell behind the three other 73-foot boats, and with the easterly breeze with 35 knots on the nose, and it was fairly uncomfortable for about 4 days. But then the wind came aft and out of the northwest, and we were able to put up bigger sails, reaching sails, and in 4 days we passed the three other 73-footers and had some really nice fast sailing toward the top of England. And we rounded Rumsey, which is at the top at 5950 north. That's getting pretty far north. In the summer, there's not much darkness. Sun rises. Actually, the sun doesn't rise. It kind of sweeps around like this. Anyway, we entered the North Sea and went down and finished at Elsinore Castle, and it took us 15 days and 23 hours to sail from Bermuda. And then after that, there was a race, the local race, called the Skåne race, and it goes from Denmark to Norway to Sweden and back to Denmark. And we actually won that race as well. So the boat was really doing well, and everyone was happy with what we did to the boat with sails in the hull and one thing and another. But Bob Johnson decided the Tide needed a rest, and he donated it to the Nova University in Florida. In the fall of '76, Bob ordered a design from a new yacht designer, Alan Gurney, who had designed some fast boats under the new rules which had come in, where the boats are shallower, have more fin keels, and what's known as a spade rudder in the back. Older boats usually have a long keel along the bottom, and the rudder was attached to the back end of the keel, like a wing with a flap on it. So, and Bob knew wood. So in November '67, we unloaded 2 truckloads of the most beautiful Oregon fir and Sitka spruce that you've ever seen. The passage was built on a concrete slab in a harbor in the Grand Bahamas. Bob Johnson owned property there, which he had some cabins and a restaurant, which he called the Captain's Chart House, because he liked the chart house restaurants, which we actually had one here at Palmetto Bay for a number of years. So we launched the boat after about 8 months of building, and it was nearly finished. We sailed it over to Spencer's Boatyard in Palm Beach. for the final touches of bottom paint and rigging and electronics and that sort of thing. By December, the start of the sailing season in Florida Passage was ready for some racing. And on December 12th, we sailed to Miami and entered the Miami to Palm Beach race, put on by the Sailfish Club, starting at Miami's Government Cup. The race is about 65 miles, and what is known in Florida as the race to the buffet. The Sailfish Club in Florida has one of the best dinner plans and the buffets in all of Florida. Anyway, the 60-mile course we did in 5 hours, and that was pretty good.
Don't forget your pictures.
Oh, yeah, I should have someone here changing the picture. In between time, this is 1977, and this is a crew from Newport Beach with Skip Allen, who's holding one end of the trophy. That's Skip Allen, that's me. This is Skip's mother and his father, and Skip had just graduated from Stanford University, and this gal up here, she was invited along, and she was the cook. And so Skip's brother was there, and we had 2 other guys, a navigator and another very good sailor. And so we won the overall prize in the Transpac. We were the youngest crew and still the youngest crew ever to win the overall. Anyway, after the boat went, we did the SRC, then we took it to California for the 67. Get my years all mixed up here, for the Transpac race, and we finished first and set a new course record there. But we were penalized for an infraction at the starting line in Los Angeles, so they gave us a 2-hour penalty to a second boat called Blackfin was named the winner and the record holder. 2 months after we finished that race, Bob Johnson passed away and left his sons with a Windward Passage and funds for the campaign, and so they continued on, and we raced it in various races. I was not sailing on it at the time, but they won the race to Bermuda, and then we went to the Big Boat Series in San Francisco, which is just a racing around San Francisco Bay, and we fished. We were just match racing against Blackfin, and we beat them fairly badly. In fact, I water skied past them. We put in the race, and I was waving as we went toward the finish line, and they were going the other way. And then in 77, I moved to Hilton Head and bought Palmetto Bay Marina with Bucky Helfrich and Gary Wheatley, improving the marina, putting in a larger travel lift so we could haul our friends' boats out. We put in a Charthouse restaurant, the Yacht Club of Hilton Head, and Captain Woody's restaurant. Captain Woody's is still a good friend of ours, and he's another of the characters around here. I still sail on boats, and at this time I still sailed on boats after I lived in Hilton Head on the West Coast, Europe and Australia, and the light boats were coming, lightweight that is. There's a boat called Ragtime from Australia, which was a plywood boat that weighed about 30,000 pounds. The Merlin, one of the new fiberglass lightweight shapes, 68 feet, 25,000 pounds, and it took a whole day off the record to Honolulu from Los Angeles. Also, one of the boats called the TidePointe set the record from Chicago to Mackinac Island. the new boats have new deeper keels, taller rigs, lighter weight, and the boats are much more expensive now. The large new fleets of boats that are being built now are, some of them are 80 to 100 feet, and one of them, I'm not using my pointer properly. That was the Windward Passage in its design. That's it, being built, turned over. That's the Windward Passage being built. This is a Class A conference. This was 82 actually, but the Windward Passage, and this is us. That's a picture taken sailing in the Sydney to Hobart race in Australia. We went down there and sailed in a couple of those races. And then we rebuilt it at Courtney Ross's yard. We put a new slimmer keel, a new rudder, a taller mast, and this was one of the races in Hawaii in the Pan Am Cup, they called it. And we won 3 of the races there, but then we broke our mast. We had a shroud failure. So after that, the fun really started. I sailed a lot with Ted Turner and did things with him, and the great character, and he had some best ideas, and it was amazing to be around while he was building his TV empire. So anyway, in 87, 86, we were at the opening of baseball season in Atlanta, for the Atlanta Braves. He owned the Atlanta Braves also. And he said, while we were all cheering and stuff, he said, "Hey, guess what? We got the Ticonderoga." Excuse me, not the Ticonderoga. We got the Bounty, the square-rigged ship that was used to make the movie Mutiny on the Bounty. And he told Bucky and I to go down to St. Petersburg and see what we could do with it. And at that time, the insurance company wouldn't let it out of the harbor. It had been moored down there for about 18 years, and had been on exhibit for MGM. And we actually had been on it a few times for parties at GSORC. But we went down, and the foremast was rotted out and out of the boat. We had to have the boat surveyed, and the survey required us to refasten, put in new nails. The nails had rusted out, they held it together. We had to rebuild all that and re-rig the mast, and I had a few sails built for it, and I put in some electronics, Loran and things like that, which it hadn't had. Anyway, Ted called, and this was Bucky and I were down at tank meet, and he I need a page turner here. Anyway, April 15th, Ted called, stepped down in Tampa, and he wanted to go to the tall ship celebration on the 4th of July at the Statue of Liberty in New York. Okay, Ted, whatever you say. Thanks, Fox. We had the ship hauled, redid the maintenance building things. I had to re-rig the mast, and we were tied up next to the Constitution in Boston on June 30th. Then we went down to New York for the 4th of July parade. Where am I now? Where am I? Like in Hawaii. So racing in the Pan Am Clipper Cup. And that was the crew. On these boats, in the day, you double the crew, you have 20 people, because there were so many on it. That's Bill Johnson, the owner. And this is our navigator, Peter Bowker. And these are all friends that I've sailed with for many years. And it was great. That's me standing there. And friends from San Diego, and East Coast, and all over. And they were a very good crew. We won 3 of the races, and then we broke our mast. Especially, it's unfortunate. We won all that. So after we sailed down to New York, this is us sailing, I would say sailing with a motor. We almost powered around on the boat because we couldn't, we had about 40 people on the boat to run all the sails and everything. We generally just used the sails you see there, the 4.5 sails, for steadying the boat and got a little extra push out of it. But we had 2 big diesel engines, and so we could power around at 9 knots, so we could. So from here, Turner's promotional crew said, let's go do the Great Lakes. And so then we did the summer during the Great Lakes. We stopped in about every port that would hold the boat, and we would hold parties for the cable operators around the country. And then all in all, for the whole time we had the boat from 86 to 90, we went to the Great Lakes twice, and we, Ted's TV stations went berserk, and that was really a fun time to be here, hang around CNN. And so anyway, we did the Great Lakes. We were in the winter. We were moored in Miami, Florida, at a new downtown marina they had there. MGM had a contract for them. They put in a dock at that harbor to support the valley, and it was on exhibit there all the time. And we, for the winter time, we usually had promotional parties on it for various people. And so then I added, when we rebuilt the boat, I added navigation, line, radar. And this is for the TV business. No one ever asked me how much it would cost. I had an unlimited budget. So anyway, in '89, Ted wanted to make a movie using the valley, and he decided to do Treasure Island. And you can still get that movie on the CD now. In fact, I think I have one. Anyone wants to borrow one at the moment. And so we got together with Charlton Heston, and Charlton Heston's son was the director, and they rounded up a crew. I think that these mostly picture people have all these friends they work with, and the ones that do good, they always invite them back. For instance, we had the sound crew for the valley. They had done the sound in Lawrence of Arabia, and they, in between shots, they tell sea stories of what it was to do various things. And the second unit director was named Joe Canutt, and he did the explosions in the movie Patton. And actually, he said he nearly died in one of his explosion deals, got a little close to home. So anyway, this is the Valley Moored and the Great Lakes up at the Great Lakes Maritime, and that was on one of our cruises to the Great Lakes. And we went to just in every large city, and it worked out really well. Turner's business went great guns. So the making the movie was one of my adventures, which I just really cherish. We had these guys were cameramen from all over, but they all were terrific. That's the movie. Had Christian Bale was Jim Hawkins, and some other English actors that look very English in there. So that's Chuck and I and discussing some next move for the ship. And this is part of the crew. Christian Bale there, and I was getting ready to do a scene. That's a long boat. We had a lot of cannon fire, which we had to do, and we actually blew that boat up with not with anyone in it, but that would have been a big mistake. Anyway, that's Ben Gunn and me, and moving the boat somewhere for a better shot, so he was helping me with the steering. And after that, we went through the Panama Canal and did the West Coast, went to San Diego and LA, and ended up in Portland, and in Seattle, actually. And Seattle, I don't know if you remember, when the United States and Russia were having a tiff of some kind, and they weren't going to one another's Olympics. Ted said, that's bullshit. We're going to have the Goodwill Games. And he had 4 issues of the Goodwill Games, one in New York, one in Atlanta, one in Russia, in Moscow, I guess, and one in Seattle. And it was, those were some really great times. All the people are really neat. So, the boat had been, the bounty, Ted donated it to a sailing museum up on the East Coast, and someone bought it after a few years. It was very hard. It was very expensive to keep this thing up. So this fellow who was the captain of the boat took around. It was used as a school ship. They took people that were interested in old-time sailing around, mostly around the East Coast and all. And the captain, there was a hurricane coming, and they knew it was coming, and they sailed out into the hurricane, and it was a lot worse than they thought. They thought they would go outside of it, but the hurricane turned and came in actually right over New Jersey. It's about 90 miles off of Cape Hatteras, and they're taken by the Coast Guard, and the Coast Guard rescued the crew, except for the captain who stayed with the boat, and he was, I'm sure he was feeling bad about making the wrong choice. This is Sheila and the King of Norway. We got around over there a little bit. And Harold, I sailed with him in a regatta, and he was just a terrific guy, still is. And he's about my age. He was born in England during the war when Norwegian government lived in England when the Nazis took over. And this is one of the new boats. That boat's 100 feet long, made of carbon fiber. It draws 25 feet. I don't know, well, it's probably about $14 million. And it has carbon fiber mast, carbon fiber sails, carbon fiber everything. And that boat set a record, the latest record of about 5.5 days. It was down from 8. So that boat will do 20 or 30 knots regularly, and the new boats that's what they've come to. There's Sheila standing next to the keel of that boat up in Port Royal. When COVID was on, they stored a few boats up there because that's the only harbor that a 25-foot draft could get into, not including the ship's harbors, but there's no yachting facilities on the big harbors. So we went over and checked it out, and Sheila was standing at attention for some reason. Anyway, it was that was one of our adventures. That boat, the Rambler 88, that was called, and that was a trend around the world 70. So that's what sailing now has come to that, and it's quite expensive. In fact, the fellow that's the head of who's the richest guy, head of I forgot his name. He had a boat built in Europe last year, or actually it took a couple of years to build. It's 270 feet long or something, and it cost $250 million. And he had to take down a railroad bridge to get it out of the place where it was in Holland. And they were cutting me off.
No, what happened?
One other thing, though, I could do was, in the summer, the America's Cup is coming on. It'll be on television and stuff, but if you want to have a talk somewhere, the TV stations, maybe at night, odd times, but we can have a talk about the America's Cup, a lot of history there, if you like sailboats.
Thank you, John. Any questions? We have 4 minutes. Any questions for John? No questions?
By the way, these books over here, I've given to the library, which will be in the library. I don't know if the big one's pretty heavy, so you might just read it when you're in the library. And the little piece of gold wire, that is the piece of the Golden Gate Bridge. And after it was 50 years old, they took off all the suspender cables and they cut them up and gold plated them. And as a memento, 50 years of the Golden Gate Bridge. And I found that at a junk store in Switzerland, when I was sailing over there one time. And it was, I thought it was a neat deal. Oh, I forgot about it. Now this is Sheila with Shep.
Oh, that's Jim.
Yeah, and Shep is a friend of ours and the son of Rip Rose here on the island, long-time resident. His family is from South Carolina. But Shep somehow got into with the television crowd up in Charleston, and they had a show that was a long-running thing called
Still going.
what was it?
It's still going.
Yeah, it's still going. It's the
Southern Charm. Southern Charm.
Southern Charm, yes, I know Southern Charm. And it's on that Bravo channel where they have a bunch of, let us know where the ladies of LA or usually the basketball wives or something like that. Anyway, thanks for coming. I hope you enjoyed that.
Thank you, John. Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for coming. Enjoy your box dinner.